Hi, everyone. Anthony Fantano here. You know who it is. Quick announcement before we get into this enlightening conversation with Professor Skye. All the artists and songs we talk about in this video linked in the description box. Check them out for yourself. Support them if you can. Also support the link down below to Doctors Without Borders, who are doing some essential work in Ukraine right now, given the current conflict there. Of course, Professor Skye's YouTube channel is in the D box too. So yeah, everything you need, everything that you'll need to hear and find for this conversation, it's down there. Seek it out. You're the best. Enjoy. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. And today we are about to have a conversation with the one and only fellow YouTuber and critic, linguist, Professor Skye, who I hope you guys have caught some of his coverage of various albums on YouTube, but he has come on today for a special conversation where he is recommending 5 Ukrainian rap artists and projects. Given what's going on in Ukraine currently, we thought it would be interesting to dive into some of the music from that country. It was at Professor Skye's suggestion. I thought it was a genius idea. So here we are doing that idea. Thanks for coming through, man.
Yeah, happy to be here. And it's the kind of thing I do a fair amount of, like international hip hop on my channel. But usually it doesn't get that many views because people are a little bit afraid of the language. So I thought, well, if you have this great audience, maybe they'll click through, maybe they'll check it out. So it's let's give it a shot.
Is that something that you think over the years is becoming a little bit less and less of a barrier now that we see on the indie side of things, artists like OG Chemo getting so much attention and, K-pop artists, obviously like having these really huge rap verses in Korean and, artists, not artists, but like fans stateside are just like completely eating it the fuck up. Like, do you think things like the language barrier and accents are becoming like less of a big deal when it comes to rap music generally?
I think so. I think Stromae also helped out a lot. He's had multiple shows at Madison Square Garden, and I think it's moving in that direction. That's the hope. And also just, even with this, I'm not some great expert on Ukrainian hip hop. I do know how to sort of analyze foreign hip hop or hip hop outside of America and contextualize it. But it doesn't take that much effort, like to actually, it takes a couple days to look at the stuff and find translations and work on it. But I do think that more people will pay more attention, and especially with something like Ukrainian hip hop, because interestingly enough, like the entire story of the Ukrainian conflict is in the music. Like you can discover it just there in certain conflicts that are in the music we're going to listen to. So it's pretty cool. Ukrainian hip hop is, about 20 years old at least. But I wanted to focus not on the early stuff. And like the best album, basically the best albums from 2008. I'm not going to be talking about it. It's a group called Lezo, Lezo. Check it out. It's wonderful. But I wanted to focus on everything after 2014. So 2014 is when they had a president who was basically a Russian puppet, and they kicked him out with the revolution. Crimea was invaded. And so there's this real push towards Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian language. So that's what'll be fun to see is I picked everything after that. So we're really going to be focusing on like now Ukrainian hip hop and not sort of the general history, which is good because a lot of the early stuff is not very good.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That is an important thing to note. I did notice that. Yeah. I didn't know if maybe there was sort of like an ethos or an idea behind that, because when you suggested everything you did, there is a recency to all of the material that you've passed my way here. But like, I think that's for the better, because for everybody who is watching and is maybe on the younger side, like as far as flows go in a lot of these tracks, like as Skye said, there is a language barrier with a lot of these tracks, but the flows you're most likely going to recognize, the trap instrumentals and production aesthetics you are going to recognize as being very current and very modern. So of the first people that you suggested here, and this is of all the 5 songs that you've brought here, this track has the most English lyrics featured in it.
Yes.
Comes from an artist named Tricky Nicki. Here's a picture of Tricky Nicki here for everybody who is watching. You've suggested this track from him called "Ride for Ukraine." No. So tell us, like, why is Tricky Nicki riding for Ukraine in this song?
So what's interesting about him, obviously he raps in English, and that's very rare. It's one of the weird things about Ukrainian hip hop. We'll see so much of it has to do with language. And the reason why I picked this song to start off with is I wanted to help everyone in the audience like not be too scared. because you understand the sounds. What he's actually rapping about is a little bit more developed, a little bit more. It's actually very political. It's all about the 2019 elections, and when he's at a certain point, he's like attacking the current president, who was like a candy magnate. He was like a billionaire on chocolate, and so he calls him a candy man, or president, Capitan or trash can. And so it's very specific to this actual time. But the reason that I liked it is that, when we're thinking about this conflict in Ukraine, we're seeing all these images, and we're seeing images of like two kinds of people. We're seeing victims and brave heroes, And so I wanted to sort of show someone who represented maybe that kind of brave hero side, somebody who's, wearing a bulletproof vest, and he's not wearing it, like he's at a Donda concert. He's wearing it legitimately because you need a bulletproof vest. You actually need the guns to defend yourself at this point. So even though it was from a couple of years ago, it's sort of announcing all of these problems that are going to be happening. He talks directly in the song about fake Russian news, about the way that Russian interference is affecting people's minds. So it's this really like desperate plea for some leadership in their country, some kind of leadership that's not just a puppet of Russia. So it's all mixed in with that goofy accent that everyone's talking about. I mean, the first line, like his English is great. His English is much better than my Ukrainian. But, damn you, the bish, I guess I can swear, damn you, the bitch.
Yeah, you're invited.
Yes, I don't swear on my channel. Everyone wonders why. Because sometimes my kids watch it. Damn you, the bitch is like the first line. Like even that is like, it doesn't quite work. Right. But I love the ferocity behind the line. I think the lyrics are quite strong. And yeah, so I wanted to let everyone just get started with something where they understand all the words. And then there's just little details of like, fake Russian news being thrown in there, and this sense of sort of a national plea for help.
Right. And, again, that's interesting that you sort of bring this track and you kind of, say what you're saying about the track, because, for everybody, especially those who are, less news savvy, this whole Russian conflict going on right now, while it has reached obviously an immense and horrific boiling point, this track puts into frame like the sort of stuff that this hasn't just come out of nowhere. Right. I mean, it's like, in a lot of ways, what's going on with Russia currently is a result of what happened in Georgia and then the annexation of Crimea. And then, they kind of reached this place and they're kind of continuing to reach out on more and more territory. And obviously certain sections of Ukraine have been more pro-Russia, allegedly, or sort of reframed as such for years. And this conflict has been ongoing. These tensions have been ongoing, and consciousness of these tensions have to have been for a while at a fever pitch for them to be kind of boiling over into music like this.
Right. And I just predict that a year from now, there's going to be like all these artists are going to come out with such great music because they have so much to talk about. I mean, I hate to talk about a tragedy so glimly, but I mean, the amount of artistic creativity that I assume will come out of this kind of explosion based on what they're going through, and especially Tricky Nicki. I mean, I believe he produces all of his own beats, or at least most of his own beats. And he's an interesting figure because he seems like, and we'll get into that when we get into the next artist, it seems like it's an interesting move to rap in English, because very few Ukrainian rappers would ever rap in English. What they would do is they would rap in Russian. And that was the next, that was basically what most people did. And it's the way that we think about, culture. We always think, well, obviously they're going to go to English if they want an audience, because that's what Daft Punk does. That's what everyone does. But for Ukrainians, the sense that we have of like how together Ukraine and Russia was for so long, and how intermeshed their culture is often seen by the idea of rapping. If you're not rapping in Ukrainian, you should rap in Russian, which is what most people did.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, in this ongoing story, something that I think a lot of people aren't really aware of is like, the kind of reclamation of language that's happening through tracks like this, and what it meant for, Zelensky, for example, to be making like those pleas and those calls and those speeches that he was in Russian, and almost like speaking to the Russian people and sort of like trying to get them to understand like what's happening of what little exposure they're going to get to that sort of thing anyway, due to, the own media barriers that they're under as well currently. But, again, another very interesting reason as to why it makes sense to pick more recent tracks here from, newer artists. This next one comes from somebody who I believe it said Grebz.
Yes. So Grebz is a play on words for the word for mushrooms. So like, drugs, mushrooms. It's like a play on the Russian word. So Grebz is almost all in Russian. And I got some data for everybody here. Yeah. So the song that we're going to listen to now, that video, because it's in Russian, has 10 times as many views as all the other songs we're going to listen to put together.
Right. You sent me all these tracks, and this one comparatively has like 250 million views, whereas like, the other tracks do have some attention, but nowhere near that much. And for anybody who's like, not in the know, and there's other YouTube channels out there that talk about this sort of thing, like No Fuckers, for example. I don't know if you're familiar with that guy, but he's a Russian YouTuber, and he's done multiple videos about Russian rappers. And there's like obviously quite a few that are very popular, and they're almost like, Lil Pump SoundCloud style, and they have like the dreads and the crazy grills and the pink hair and everything. So, again, that is interesting that, sort of like speaking in that language instantaneously opens you up to hundreds of millions more views.
So think about if you're a rap artist and you're in Ukraine, imagine like what you're leaving on the table. I mean, like in order to make this kind of artistic statement, and after this song, they'll be all in Ukrainian, and most rap now is in Ukrainian. You're like literally leaving. It would be like if you lived in Canada and you insisted on rapping in French Canadian. If just all Canadians just rapped in French Canadian, just shut off the entire American market. So it makes sense when we hear a song like this song, Tает Lёd, which is a really good example of kind of that early sound of Ukrainian hip hop, kind of more of a party vibe, a little bit more of a house vibe, maybe not as modern to our ears, but that was the path to success in the past.
But yeah, strong dance vibe on that track. In terms of the production, seems like very 2000s, very Eurocentric, even though it came out in like 2017. But there is like, still like a very notable sort of flow to it as well.
Yeah, and there's a couple different voices. There's this one voice in the post-chorus. It's really goofy and just sounds like a barrel-chested guy just kind of talking. If you see the video, he's like in the middle of a field with a boombox. It's really quite funny. Right. It's very heavy on the chorus. It's really trying to be sort of very repetitious. At the very end, there's like a instrumental break, and it sounds, totally Crazy Frog era European music. But also I should say one more thing. So not only in Ukrainian hip hop do you have to figure out between Russian or Ukrainian, you also have to figure out how do you write things. So most of these are written in Cyrillic, and this is written in Cyrillic, but in Russian Cyrillic, and most of the others are written in Ukrainian Cyrillic. So I apologize for my pronunciation of everything here. This is me reading the romanization of certain words and trying to put those things together. So there's all these weird barriers where these artists have to choose between more accessibility or more authenticity, and they just constantly have to choose. And I should also say if we break down the song lyrically, it's not much. This is I'd say the fluffiest of all the songs. It's kind of a love song. It's pretty simple. But I would only pick artists that used for the thumbnail a thumbnail that says "Stop the War in Ukraine." So all these artists, they've swapped out all of their thumbnails and it just says "Stop the War in Ukraine." So it's important to note that even though these guys are rapping in Russian and they're appealing to the Russian audience, they're still very much against this as well.
What else can you say about, people on stream are seeing an image of this guy, and for anybody who obviously, wasn't able to see or hasn't seen the music video for it yet, there's a lot of obscuring of the face. He wears his bucket hat so low you can't see anything. There are other people in the video where it's the same. There are a lot of face masks and everything. Like, does this guy typically stay anonymous in everything that he does?
Yeah, I was thinking about that because there's another group that we're going to be studying that does kind of a similar thing. Yeah. And I think part of it is sort of traditional Ukrainian headgear. But I also, I think there is obviously the issue of race and hip hop, right? And it's interesting. And a lot of people at home are probably like, saying, wait, what's the deal? Is there anything, are they ever going to address this? And it's fascinating because when you study hip hop, international hip hop, it's always about the voice, the voiceless, and the people in society who are, less privileged or who are put down. And in societies that are, super multi-ethnic, that's fairly easy to see. But in a society like Ukrainian society, there's not as much diversity. So the oppression as we now know, mostly comes from Russian society and Russian culture. So it's sort of my pet theory that they want to look cool. And it's hard to look cool just being a bunch of white guys in a field, like when you've been watching all these hip hop videos and all these cool dudes, that's the sense that I get, but that I could just be projecting.
Well, mystique and masks and music in general are nothing new. I just want to know if there was, sort of a story about, obviously Daft Punk, they're robots, MF Doom is a super villain, there's a lot of different angles to it. Because, no matter who you are in music, when you're putting yourself out there, I think nobody just wants to come across as like just a guy.
Right. I think that's the larger point. I think you saved my point. Thank you.
So anything you could do to sort of like add to a character, I suppose, we'll definitely draw people in. Our next rapper here who you suggested, definitely not just some guy.
Definitely not just some guy. I am so excited to share this artist with your massive audience. I think this artist could be an international superstar, and I think it's going to be because
I think she's really cool. Alyona Alyona is.
I think it's pronounced Alyona Alyona. I've heard her pronounce it just Alyona Alyona. I don't know why.
Got it.
But.
well, this is her. I mean, what you have told me in the email is that, obviously aside from our friend here who is just, obviously a Ukrainian rapper, but rapping in Russian, I'm guessing strictly as a Ukrainian rapper rapping in Ukrainian, this is the most popular artist the country has to offer right now.
As far as I can figure. So it's a little bit hard to measure. And the last artist we're going to study who's going to be in the Eurovision contest, but this is definitely, if not the biggest, one of the biggest pop stars. And that's the other idea behind doing this whole project, is going back to that theme of just thinking of, the brave and the murdered, it's just a country. This is filled with people. It's just filled with teenagers who like dumb music and like good music. And, they're just human beings like us who just want to listen to some fun songs and watch the videos on YouTube. And part of the reason I thought it'd be fun to do this is just to really remind people that there's an entire culture, and that entire culture should be thinking, that last Alyona Alyona album wasn't as good. It was okay, but it wasn't quite as good. They should be thinking about that as opposed to, how to flee or how to make Molotov cocktails.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I mean, from what you've said here in the email, she's a former kindergarten teacher. And,
that's an amazing detail.
An amazing detail. And, another thing that, again, just is very interesting about her is that she's just very big. And obviously I don't mean that in sort of like an insulting sense or anything. If you look at her music video and you check her out, her stature, I mean, she's just a mountain of a person and has a huge personality to go along with it. And, I just love the way that she comes across in this Pushka track that you've passed along. What else can you tell us about this track that kind of drew you to it? I mean, I myself am loving the kind of fusion of those trap perks, but then also you have that subtle little bass shifting that goes on, a lot of drill currently, especially out of the UK. I love how in this particular instance, listening to foreign language rap really causes you to focus on the rhythm and the melodicism of, their vocals quite a bit. And again, even though that language barrier for me personally is there, those flow hits and Pushka, it's catchy. It's catchy at first. You don't even have to know what the fuck is going on. It's just catchy on first listen.
And that's part of the reason that I love doing this with languages I don't speak, because I get to put myself in the position of the rest of the 7 billion people who don't speak English and still listen to our music. So they just hear it, and that's how they might speak a little English, but for the most part that's how they hear it. And so I mean, this chorus, if you can hear this chorus and the song plays it 4 or 5 times, ya prosto pishka, pushka, pishka, it's so interesting, it's so melodic, it's so rhythmic, it's goofy. The whole thing is goofy. The whole song, if you read the lyrics, it's a little bit about believing in yourself. It's about not having tattoos on your face. That's the first line. She calls herself a pishka, which is it's like a Russian dessert. It's like a bun, and I assume the Ukraine as well. And then Pushka is the word for rifle in many, many, many languages. My wife is Serbian, and she's like, "Why are you saying rifle all the time?" And then pishka. So it's I'm basically I'm a donut. rifle, donut, rifle going back and
there's
forth.
a juxtaposition there.
Yeah. And it's just, and like you said, it's like the sound and all the way through. And she's rapping about sort of her interior light. And I mean, I love there's this whole one verse where she plays a little bit with her size in a way like a lot of great, like Big Pun and Notorious B.I.G. would, like I will allow, she talks about lying down on the beat and pressing on it. And I've listened to, all of her music, the album before the most recent one in particular. I mean, her flow is just great. I don't think there's anything you can say about her flow. Even if you don't understand the words, she really has whatever it is that the Ukrainian language can give, like whatever you can do with it, playing with the syllables. And like you said, I think I can't imagine anyone doing it better. So it's really worth listening to her entire, really her albums, because the main problem I have with all this stuff is at a certain point, most of these acts get popular enough that they then start like getting weirdly pop, and they'll have some like super European singer thrown on and sort of like a layer of glaze to where like it feels like you might be watching, American Idol or something, as opposed to like, so that's the one problem I have with the most recent album. She went a little bit in that direction, but still with a song like this, Pushka, Pushka, Pishka, yeah.
Well,
and it's my, yeah.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that phenomenon, because obviously, like, that kind of dynamic is nothing too alien for like a lot of American artists, and the idea of like selling out or cheapening your sound or that sort of thing. It's a tale as old as time as far as popular music goes. Like, do you think there is sort of like a rootsy European artist to Eurovision, where basically like bastardizing our sound pipeline going on, where, you're essentially just like kind of trading in what you built your brand on in order to like appeal to the entire continent in a way?
I'm going to say that I think that exists in Ukraine, but also I'm not enough of an expert to be able to tell you like who the Griselda of Ukraine is, So like we're I don't know how you say do in Ukrainian, but whoever it is that whoever it is that I'm studying here or talking about really is at the top of the game. So I think certainly for there, it appears as though it's very easy to just sort of be pushed into that realm. And also, again, when you're rapping in Ukrainian, you're rapping to 35 million people as opposed to 130 million, or however many there are in Russian, like you have to find a way to make a living, and it's not easy making a living as an artist. And if you make your name as a cool rapper and then you have some kind of cheesy singer and everyone's grandma likes your music, maybe it's not the end of the world. Maybe it's just a different modality of music that we're not used to.
And as far as, some of the literal translations of, her lyrics in her own stuff, there's a part where she refers to herself as like a weird unread book. Do you have any inside baseball on that? Is that kind of maybe an idiom or a saying or something that maybe other people would sort of understand who are where she's from?
I worked on this a lot. So like I said, like my wife is Serbian, but her mom was Slovak. And it turns out Ukrainian is closer to Slovak than it is to Russian. Mm-hmm. So when she heard that, she was like, why is she saying she's an unread book? So I guess there's some kind of parallel there. I couldn't figure it out. I tried looking it up. Unfortunately, because I'm a French professor, so I'm, fluent in French, and so I know how to find those resources. I don't quite have the resources. Like even that bun thing that I figured out, like that was only when I really pushed through to figure out what is a pishka, because I had pishka, pushka, pishka stuck in my head for so long that I had to look it up. So I think she's mainly just talking about just being odd. A lot of like her first hit was a song about fish. And I don't mean like, this isn't Ghostface Killah cocaine slang. This isn't any of this. Like she just sang a song about fish because she came from like the countryside, and she like there was a fish near her stream, or in her stream near her house. So I think she's just basically talking about being kind of weird, and she does kind of an anti-bullying thing quite often. So I think that's kind of her perspective, as just being kind of a weird person that you can relate to. Yeah, and certainly, just she's so relatable, and I think, like you said, like she has that larger than life personality, and she seems so comfortable in her skin and just so good with her flows. So
yeah, Pishka Pushka, there's definitely a juxtaposition there, and on top of it, just like with most hip hop, she may just be saying it for the alliteration of it. You know what I mean? As both of us have experienced, like it's just really catchy. It's just like stupidly catchy,
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next one here because, we
Yes.
have a couple more great suggestions here that you threw my way. This next one comes from Alina Pash. Slukhay is the song that you suggested. Slukhay.
Yes.
This one was one of my favorites of the bunch, mostly because like it reminded me of this weird, hard-hitting, danceable international mix, much in the same way that like MIA's music used to be back in the day, who's easily one of my favorite artists of the 2000s. I mean, obviously, given her background, she comes to like very different artistic conclusions, but it seems like a real menagerie of a lot of different things coming together into some really loud, aggressive dance music. With, sort of like folksy roots to it, but then there's rapping on top of it too. And, with all the vocal effects, there's something almost like modern, maybe even like hyper pop about it too. It's a lot of things clashing at once, and it sort of creates this really exciting sense of chaos because of it.
Yeah. And what's amazing about this song is what I tried to bring in here is there's a real rise now of folk music influence in the hip hop. And that's the main thing that international hip hop can do is, I give the example all the time. I actually teach a class on French hip hop. I'm teaching it right now. And when French hip hop makes reference to African sounds, it's not abstract. It's like that's the sounds that were actually in their house, So like when they use African instrumentation or African samples, and in a similar way, so that makes French hip hop totally different than American hip hop in many ways. It has this whole new influence. And so with this Ukrainian hip hop, now that they're giving into the Ukrainian language, along with it, they're having all these different folk traditions. And if you listen to the chorus of the song, which I suppose you'll play for people, it's insane, the vocalization on this chorus. It's really like aggravating and exciting and tense, and very tense. And it's straight from Slavic folk music. You can hear stuff like this all over the Slavic world in their folk music. Even actually on the new Stromae album, there's tons of that kind of sound coming in. And it's just mixed in with this kind of cool party beat, like you're saying, where you might think it's hyper pop, but it's hyper pop and it's folk music at the same time.
So let's get into the final one here.
I have to set this one up.
Oh yeah, sure.
So this is the scandal. So if you're paying attention to Ukrainian music, Alina Pash is now the subject of a huge scandal. So she won the Eurovision. So in order to get into the Eurovision, if you don't know Eurovision, there's a great Will Ferrell movie about it. It's an international competition in Europe. It's a huge deal for people in Europe. Like it's a very, very big deal. It's like the Olympics, but with music. And so every country can be entered into the contest. And the person who won from Ukraine was Alina Pash. But she went to Crimea once in 2015. And she went through Russia, which is against the law. So she was literally forbidden from performing, from representing Ukraine. She was taken out of the competition for that reason. So that was what I wanted to do, was show you the song that took the place of that, because we have and right before the invasion, before it actually happened, this was all going on. This was like all the newspapers were talking about, is Putin going to attack? And also, is Alina Pash going to represent Ukraine or not? So the next group is the group that came in second and that is going to replace it. But when we talk about, music reflecting society and reflecting life, is a very clear sign of exactly where Ukraine was at the moment of invasion.
That's, awful that controversy has kind of impacted things in that way.
Yeah. But I mean, to her credit, she's come out against the war. It's not like she's some kind of collaborator. It's just,
right.
She went to Crimea once in 2015. And yeah.
Yeah. I think that given the cultures of these various places and the way that Russia has sort of encroached upon them, I mean, there have to have been just personal reasons for her to want to go. Is there some kind of presumption that, it's just against the rules, and because it's against the rules, we're just enforcing it? Or is there the presumption that there was something kind of nefarious behind that sort of decision to go there?
I mean, so there's this was covered in the BBC and everything. So I've looked up, I've tried to find more of a reason other than just she went the wrong way. So right. I think it is the assumption that she's sort of collaborating. I mean, after World War II and in France, if you ever did anything that might be perceived of as playing for with the Nazis, you were very, you had to defend yourself, and sometimes it was very difficult. It has that kind of feeling of like, well, whatever it is, we don't like it. You're too much of a Russian sympathizer. And it's just fascinating to just see us go from Grebz, where they're making the song and it's all super popular and they're one of the biggest bands in the country. And now if you even went to Crimea through Russia, then you're banned. Okay. Also, apparently there's some kind of like voting irregularities. So the band that we're going to study next, Kalush, won the call-in vote, but the critics didn't pick them. So I guess there was some kind of voting irregularity as well. Apparently Eurovision is like FIFA or something. It's like a very complicated and corrupt organization, according to most people.
Got it. Well, you've already kind of teased a little bit there. Kalush Orchestra is the name of this next group. Stefania is the name of the track that you've suggested here. So with this being the final of the 5 groups that you've suggested, why did you go with this one? Maybe outside of the obvious Eurovision tie-in there.
Yeah, so I've actually picked 2 songs. I don't know if that works with you for timing, because the second one's my favorite Ukrainian rap song I've ever heard. Mm-hmm. I picked this one because it's the Eurovision song, but also, so Kalush is the name of a city in Western Ukraine, so kind of representing their kind of roots where they are. I really like the interplay between these rappers. And as far as this idea of building on the folk sounds of Ukrainian music, I mean, this whole song is just, it's almost more folk than hip hop. And then the parts that are hip hop are also kind of dancey. It sort of ties us back together to the way it was before. I mean, it's a Eurovision song, so it's going to be less edgy than a lot of the other things that we've studied. I mean, this whole song is dedicated to his mother. Stefania is the name of his mother. I think so. I mean, it's going to win, right? I mean, how do you not vote for the Ukrainian song in Eurovision? So right. It's probably going to win. And so it's kind of interesting to have that ahead of, because I think it's going to happen in May, to have that ahead of time. And I just think they have the best flows. Like the lead singer has like multiple flows that he can go to. There's a secondary guy who sort of does like kind of like the barking guy, almost like, I think of him as like the Ukrainian DMX, not quite barking that hard, but that kind of way. And then just mixing it really well. I think this is the best example of just very folksy with hip hop.
So again, Stefania is the first of the 2 tracks that you've brought here. This is the Eurovision song. Yes. The second track that you've suggested, which translates to "Don't Piss Me Off," would you say that's the edgier of the 2 tracks and more representative of their sound generally?
Yeah, I think so. It's actually translated, if you translate literally, it's "Don't marinate me," which is quite funny.
Marinate me in piss, or
yeah, I suppose it's some kind of idiom. And the video is great because the video has him and he's dancing in a cellar with all these pickled like vegetables and fruit, and pickling food's a very big thing in Slavic culture. So he's like, instead of like flashing watches, he's flashing pickled eggs and everything. Right. But yeah, I mean, the reason I like this one so much is it has a lot more of that kind of drill sound, but then it's mixed in with it's called a dremba, which is the word for a jaw harp or a mouth harp. And so like he's playing that at the beginning, and then more of that flute sound as well. And it just, the interplay between the rappers on that one, I just really like, because it's the kind of barking DMX guy. And then the main rapper has like, I thought there was like 5 guys, because this main rapper has this one flow where he just gets, it's like he's hiccuping. He's like, the way he uses the language, I mean, and the whole verse is about selling weed. So it's not like he's not saying anything super important, but he's just has this crazy verse. And I don't know. I've never heard anything like that in hip hop. And I think it's what the Ukrainian language can do.
All right. Just a bit of a taste there. I mean, I don't know. I definitely hear what you're saying to an extent here with this track. It does have that very kind of soaring chorus with the reverby sheen on top of it. But I don't know. It sounds like a banger to me. It's like the flow to me didn't come off to me as like, just like a generic pop rap flow. You know what I mean? Like seemed like he had a lot to say there.
Well, how I know you're right is, I can't hear it, and I'm watching you,
I know.
nod your head. And I've got the song stuck in my head, especially the post-chorus. So it totally works as a song. One of my favorite things about this song is I found another video where someone's discussing it in English because it's a Eurovision song.
Yeah.
And there's a whole argument in the comment section about what kind of flute it is, because it wasn't the other kind of flute I was talking about, the sopilka. It's a talenka, which is a totally different kind of flute. And like you play it like out like this, like just with one little, and so, you know, just, so that's that crazy, dirty sound that yeah. The more I hear this song, the more I ended up liking it.
You know, one of the saving graces to sticking to what I know in terms of what I cover on a regular basis is that that argument is never going to happen in my comments section. I don't know if my fans can handle that argument. Like, you know, like there are much less important things that they seem to just go completely berserk over. I can only imagine what the state of the comments would be in shambles if the discussion was, what kind of flute is this? We don't know. I think it's this. I think it's that. They'd be killing each other. There would be casualties.
Yeah, that's. I mean, another thing too is that, I mean, I think it's easy to draw a parallel to a song like "Dear Mama," you know,
Sure.
you know, by Tupac,
Sure.
because the song is all about his mom,
Sure.
and it's not, you know, the struggles are not the same. I mean, some of the lyrics are like, you know, you're always there even if the roads were destroyed. But what I think is interesting is when we think about what the people are going through right now, this song represents hope. Like hope that Ukraine will win some kind of glory at the Eurovision, that there'll be some kind of normalcy. So even though part of me thinks it's kind of cheesy that it's just a song, like the chorus is just Stefania, mom, Stefania, just over and over again. That's what he's singing. Right. It does like the theme of motherhood and security and safety, and maybe the mother is actually the country itself and feeling safe and whole, you know, warm. Like it's an amazingly inspirational song, and hopefully will be the soundtrack. You know, hopefully Ukraine will make it through and will be independent and will stop being murdered. And hopefully this can be like the soundtrack to some kind of resolution. So, all
right, well, there you have it. Marinate. That one did get some strong reactions from chat off the bat. Nice. Some people loved the jaw harp. One guy said fire. One guy said trash. One guy said Ukrainian suicide boys. But that was certainly a crazier mix of sounds than the last track, because as you said, you had that drill bass, you had those trap perks, those auto-tune hits, which were very Travis Scott, were nuts. You had those zany lead vocals that felt almost like de-Antwoord in a way. There was a lot going on there, a lot of zany, colorful, insane layers.
Yeah, and especially if I really implore your viewers to listen to the whole song, because later when he comes back with a totally different style and flow, there's even like more back and forth. And the guy who's making the kind of growly sounds, if you watch the video, he has like a complete bodysuit with these crazy patterns on it.
Yeah, like his fingers are covered, his face is covered.
There's
an image here. People can kind of make him out. He seems to. I've seen a lot of pictures of him. He seems to have a different bodysuit for every occasion. Yeah. It seems like no matter what's going on, he has a different body. I wonder how he's making them. I mean, they're very ornate. They seem like they're based on these really elaborate patterns that you might see on like an Oriental rug or something. Like
like he's trying to camouflage on the floor,
right? Or like, you know, some like Victorian home on the wallpaper. I don't really know, you know, but he does have these really interesting bodysuits and coverings that he's sort of, you know, just. I'm at a loss for words. But it just sort of covers.
It's cool because it goes back to that thing we were talking about with Grebz, with trying to look cool and, you know, having the hat as well. And, you know, there is sort of, it does seem like there's almost something of a uniform that some of them try to have. It's definitely not just trying to look like an American rapper. That's one thing that I like about all these. You know, they're not trying to pass for American. The lead, I just discovered this like today in Reuters. It was announced, the main rapper, Ola Psiuk, I don't know how to pronounce that, the guy who has multiple different flows. So just to give you an idea of how crazy it is, He is in Western Ukraine, and he's distributing medicine and helping people flee through the border. He's working with a volunteer force, like literally getting people out of the country so they don't die. His girlfriend is like 300 miles away making Molotov cocktails. And then a different member of the orchestra is serving in the territorial defense unit, meaning like he's got the rifle and he's running around and he's trying to protect the city. So it's easy to laugh at Ukrainian rap, but you can't get much more hardcore than, you know, like having your girlfriend making Molotov cocktails and your member of your group actually running out there and fighting in the streets. So it's an odd reminder that they're hoping to win Eurovision while literally in the middle of a war.
Right. That's such a very odd and disturbing dynamic, that you're potentially on, you know, a track to win one of the most popular and really glamorous like music contests on the planet, while simultaneously you're worried about being in the middle of a war zone.
Yeah. So that's also true. Yeah.
All right. Well, look, man, you came through with some amazing recommendations, and I think you've illuminated a lot of people to a really interesting corner of the music world with all of this. You know, I very much appreciate you coming through and bringing some knowledge. I know chat appreciates as well. Again, for, you know, those of you who are watching on YouTube, and for anybody who's in chat who wants to, you know, kind of catch up later, and, you know, get more into all the artists that were suggested, everything that we played is going to be down in the D box on YouTube. So just, you know, look out for it this week. And yeah, thank you very much again for the suggestions.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for sharing it with your chat and your audience.
Yeah, no problem.
And also that we are also trying to get people to give to Doctors Without Borders, which is a charity that is actually on the ground right now in Ukraine and trying to help. I thought they'd fit pretty well, because that singer, the guy who's saying na 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 na, is doing the same thing, trying to get medicine to people, because that's really what they need the most. So if you're watching and you can help, you know, beyond clicking on these people's albums and listening to their music and helping them get the 1/3 of 1 cent, you know, you can also help that way.
Yeah. And, you know, again, reminder that is down in the description box as well. And, you know, toward the front end of the video, we'll have a reminder that that is the case, you know, to sort of push people to that. But yeah, this has been great. Again, thank you for taking the time.